Hi, my name's Garth Hopkins with Caltrans here in Sacramento, and I wish Professor Griggs was here because I would. It was a little sobering every once in a while when we get these kind of presentations like he gave us today in terms of what the ramifications are as a result of climate change, and I think it's a little depressing at times, I think. But on the plus side, I have to admit I've been with state government for a number of years now, and at least for over 5 years, state government has really, in my opinion, stepped up and really is starting to work and address these issues. And so it's been an ongoing thing. It's not like a here today, gone tomorrow. So that's on the plus side. I think it's interesting to see what some of the other states have done in regards to climate change, and we're trying to deal with it. So I think that's a good thing. But also, transportation ranks right up there with energy and also with the other infrastructures, as a key part of infrastructure that Californians rely on every day. And so we in the transportation side of the house, we're starting to deal with it. And but there's a number of players or entities that are responsible for transportation. It's not just Caltrans at the state level is responsible. We do own and operate the 50,000 lane miles of the state highway system, but local streets and roads, for example, those are within the purview of cities and counties. It's their responsibility. Rail, it's privately owned. They have to, work on how those the rail impacts are going to be as a result of climate change. Ports and airports, they're regional boards, usually and city-owned here in California. And then the transit districts or transit agencies here in California are transit districts. And so the point being there is, that fortunately many of these entities are starting to work on how climate change is going to impact their specific areas of transportation. As I said before, Caltrans is the owner and operator of the state highway system. And, Caltrans, we've always had to deal, when there's been severe weather events, we've always had to deal with the fallout. And so, we're going to continue doing that when there are landslides, flooding, whatever. But we just anticipate there's going to be more often. We're going to have to respond to these kind of emergencies as climate change starts picking up more and more. Sea level rise, first of all, in terms of its impacts on transportation. And I don't know if you can read that box in the top right-hand corner, but there are going to be, some specific impacts, as some folks have already pointed out. There's a roadway washout and flooding, and a lot of these impacts in the little box, they're going to be maybe more on the permanent side of the house with the sea level rise, but then also on the storm surge, when there are the storm surge like Professor Griggs was bringing up, those are going to be temporary impacts. And you can see in the picture down the right, bottom right, where there is a temporary storm surge that did have an impact on the streets there. Precipitation. And there's some of the impacts as a result of some of these intense weather events, as the experts have been telling us, will be occurring more and more. And from a transportation standpoint, we're going to see more landslides, we'll see more flooding. That's going to cause, travel delays and other resulting impacts. And the pictures, again, I think the pictures are worth 1,000 words in there. You can see a result of a landslide and then the flooding on roads and then also a landslide where a lot of debris was washed out onto the road. And again, these are, for the most part, temporary impacts, but it depends on the severity of the situation, and it can have a long-lasting impacts to a community, particularly when they have limited access. Increased temperatures. We're going to see potentially more rutting and also buckling to the pavement surfaces. There may be some kinking of the railroad, the rail lines as it gets extremely hot during some periods of the day. Also, from a maintenance standpoint, Caltrans, like I said, owns and operates and maintains the state highway system, and there may be some days, it happens right now, of course, particularly here in the hotter areas, where it's just too hot to do maintenance during the day, and so we may be seeing more and more of that, where maintenance just from. Sometimes we do it in the urbanized areas to do maintenance in the evening because it's less congested, and we want to minimize the impact to the traveling public from our maintenance activities, but we may be seeing more maintenance at night as a result of these increased temperatures. Wildfires. You know, and although wildfires may not permanently damage actually the structure of the highway itself, you know, it does cause disruptions. And again, people will be impacted in terms of being able to get from point A to point B. They may have to close down the roadway at times, and so as we see more wildfires, we're going to be seeing more of these type of activities. Plus, also, you know, I think we're going to see more impacts on the transportation side of the house as a result of the wildfires from landslides, you know, as a result of rainstorms that come in after the land has been all burnt out and can't hold the moisture as well as it normally can. And there's a number of employees at Caltrans statewide that are currently working on climate change issues or climate change related issues, and these are just some of the major areas within our own department within Caltrans, you know, such as transportation planning, the environmental. On transportation planning, we'll look at more policy related issues. On the environmental side of the house, we're looking at a number of, you know, at the environmental level during the development of the environmental the documents. You know, how are the climate change related impacts addressed? Traffic operations, they have to deal with the regular flow of the traffic, and when disruptions occur, how are we going to reroute traffic or deal with those disruptions? And maintenance are the guys it used to be the orange trucks, but now it's the white trucks with the orange stripe on it, but they're the ones that actually have to fix the road, get it back up, clean out the landslide or whatever the impact may be, and get it up and running again. So they're the real foot soldiers, if you will, on addressing these type of issues. You know, there's Caltrans, as I said, we're gearing up, starting to deal with climate change issues, and one of the first orders of business that we did here within our own department was see what does Caltrans do, or what can we do to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions resulting from our own operations. And we had a report that just came out a few months ago, as a matter of fact, that looked at what kind of greenhouse gas emissions reduction strategies Caltrans has done over the past couple of years to reduce the emissions, you know, from our own operations. And the major savings we saw was a result of, you know, when we're doing road projects and actually using different kind of pavements and concrete and additives to those kind of, you know, pavement surfaces have had a major reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And also instituting LED lights, you know, during the lighting systems around the state, you know, we've really reduced the amount of energy that we've required to light the roadways throughout the state. So we're quite proud of that report, and identifies a number of things that Caltrans has done to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Next, I just kind of wanted to point out two other documents. One is guidance on incorporating sea level rise. It's an internal Caltrans document, essentially, that we give to our staff, not statewide, but located along the coast, that, you know, how to incorporate sea level rise issues into when they're doing the environmental work or designing, or more importantly, designing the particular project, construction project that will be, you know, built along the coast. And essentially, the major thing is we look at the design life of the project. For example, if it's adding pavement onto the roadway surface to you know, make it so there's not so many bumps or whatnot, why, you know, usually the design life is usually 20 years for those type of projects. And so sea level rise may not have to be incorporated. If it's a major project such as a new bridge or something that has a 75 or, you know, year plus design life, and so sea level rise does need to be incorporated into those longer life projects that we do construct around the state on the state highway system. And then that other document on the right there is something that we also just recently completed, and it was guidance to regional transportation agencies throughout the state on how to incorporate climate change issues into their long-range planning process. And you know, as I noted earlier, Caltrans is not the only transportation agency in the game here, so to speak. And so we have to provide information to a lot of these regional transportation agencies to, you know, help them incorporate climate change issues into their long-range transportation planning process. And so that was an effort on our part to get that kind of information out. A lot of times these agencies have very, very small staffs, particularly in the rural parts of the state, and they can use as much information as they can get on how to address climate change issues. what's coming up next for Caltrans? We're going to start looking at, within the state, we're going to start doing some vulnerability assessments of the state highway system to climate change impacts. And rather than doing a statewide view, our state is way too large to do a credible vulnerability assessment. We're going to start looking at the 12 districts' offices, and they're all county-based, but there's each one of those colors represents a Caltrans district within the state. So we're going to be doing a district-by-district assessment of the climate change impacts to the state highway system within that respective Caltrans district, and it'll give us a little bit more information in terms of how we can start planning and preparing for those potential climate change impacts. And quite frankly, I mean, we're going to be looking at past history as well, where a section of roadway has flooded in the past when there was an intense storm. Well, most likely, like I say, it's going to flood more. It'll flood again in the future, and probably more often. And so, but we need to start from a comprehensive standpoint, start looking at those type of issues, and like I say, dealing with them and addressing them in our respective planning and design issues. And that's all for my presentation. Thank you very much. Yay, one question. All right. I know it's the end of the day, man, you guys. Kudos to you guys.
I'm Suzanne Marr from the Federal EPA in San Francisco. That second bullet item will allow each district to identify and prioritize mitigation efforts. Do you mean climate change mitigation, or do you mean how they're going to
mitigate?
Adapt?
Like, let's say if a particular section of roadway, if it needs better culverts for drainage, then we can start, like I say, from a comprehensive standpoint, rather than just looking at a very specific section of roadway. Let's look at that, entire the district area and that whole geographic area within that respective district, and start kind of, hopefully, what our goal is try to prioritize where we need to start putting our very, very limited resources on these type of issues. Because, I mean, geez, I think, excuse me, as most of us know, most of the transportation system was built in the 50s and 60s, and it's toward the end of its design life. And so this is just one more wrinkle of issues that the transportation sector has to deal with in terms of just keeping the system up and running so people can get from point A to point B. We're going to start, we've got a contract, or we will start working on a contract for like a 3-year period, and it's going to take us, we just have limited resources on that as well, but I would hopefully after 3 years we'll have pretty much most of the state done where we can start looking at, comprehensive viewpoint statewide.
Frank Metcalf, retired. I believe that Caltrans is causing a lot of greenhouse gas. Let's take a look at the Bay Bridge. All that steel was manufactured over in China. No EPA controls over the Chinese steel plants. Then the steel was put on fossil burning ships, transported over to San Francisco, polluting the air all the way.
Yeah.
And then now you're tearing the bridge down. All that steel's putting back on ships, being transported back to China to be recycled.
Right.
I mean, there's got to be a better way. They're just, look, you're causing greenhouse gas.
Mm-hmm.
You're contributing to the climate change.
No,
we're spending $55 billion because of a Superstorm Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of action like that. It's because of California's action. Look at all the import cars they bring into California on fossil burning ships. No EPA controls over the automobile manufacturers overseas. We've got to get control over the whole picture.
No, you're right. I mean, definitely this is an international issue. California is just one small part of the globe here. But you do bring up a valid point. But also, on the converse of that, we have fiscal responsibility, which is kind of flying into the face. We have to go in low budget to get the materials. And another thing, for example, like the cabling for on the Bay Bridge itself, there was no company here in the United States that was capable of building those cables that was necessary, and those had to come from China. It was just cost prohibitive for any American company to step up and say, yeah, we can do the the cabling. the federal government does have some Buy America clauses, where we're trying to stimulate more, using more American-made goods. But like I say, on the other side of the coin, we have to be fiscally responsive and responsible and try to do the best we can with the limited funding that we have. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right. It's a worldwide issue. Yeah.
And there is an international negotiating structure around the IPCC, but you make a fair point, and obviously there's a lot of concern that that process is not as strong as it could be. So it's a fair point, and we appreciate that input.
Ask an easy question. No, you bring up some valid points.
5 years ago, there were blue-collar jobs, and now we have no blue-collar jobs in the United States.
Yeah.
Look at the young people. They have no place to go unless they have a college education. And now we're overcrowding our nursing system into jobs. We've got a whole picture to look at. We've got to look at the whole picture, not just the...
No, you're right. Okay. Well, thank you very much.